Welcome to this week's Principles on Leadership video. And I'm glad that you're here. This week what I would like you to do is pick up two principles that seem at odds with each other, and yet in fact they are bound together. We have to get both of these principles, because if we only get one of them, it negates our ability to be a leader for Christ. And so here's the first principle, and that principle is, why are we saved? Why ought God to let us into his kingdom? Imagine you're sitting before God and God says, what's your name? And we say, my name's Dan or Jim or Bob or Harvey or Tom or whatever, Mary Lou. And then God says, okay, now why should I let you into my kingdom? And we say to him, well, you know what, God, if you noticed, I was at Northridge Community Church almost every Sunday. And in fact, one Sunday they passed a slip around, and it showed in the flyer, it showed what people gave to the church. And Lord, did you see how much I gave? And oh, by the way, if you take your computer there, God, and you Google YouTube, you'll see that I was sent these leadership videos. Somebody saw me as a ministry leader, and therefore, obviously, Lord, I was a leader, I was involved, I gave. Clearly, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. And God goes, I don't see your name in here. I just don't, it's not there. And as we walk away, the next person walks up and God asks him his name, and he tells him. And then says, why should I let you in the kingdom? And you hear him say, because of what Jesus Christ did on the cross for me. Because of what God did. There's nothing that I've done, nothing whatsoever that I've done that deserves to come into heaven. But I'm only there because of Christ and what he did for me and his love for me. God's going to get up, put his arm around that person and walk him in to the kingdom. Friends, we have to get that principle. As leaders, we can begin to think that it's dependent on something that we did. Our salvation, our entrance into the kingdom of God is 100% completely dependent upon what Jesus Christ did. And once we get that picture, then we have to move to the next principle. And that is that he challenges us to work. He challenges us to do something. The early Christians, I've shared this with you before, but I think it's such a critical point. The early Christians' favorite name for themselves was a slave of Christ. A slave of Christ. And one of the things that they knew is that a slave had no position. They had nothing at all. No finances, no anything that was theirs. Everything they had was the master's. And when they went off to work during the day, they believed that they were working for the master. And when they came home and the master says, how was your day? You looks like you're sweating, you worked hard, what's going on? And you say, it was a great day. I was serving you. And I looked up, when I got a little weary, I looked up and there you were, and I saw you watching over me. And so I love, Lord, serving you. And so I'm not sure if there's some tasks, some things that you're going, well, I just won't do that. Maybe there's things, ministries that you don't like doing, but you feel like God's calling you to do that. I don't know where that is in serving. But if we're going to be leaders, if we're going to be people that God can use, we have to, number one, recognize that we are saved because of what Christ did, and now we are to be slaves of his, to do exactly what he wants us to do. And I know there are some things that we just don't like to do. There's things that offend us, that we feel like, maybe I'm just too good for that. I don't have to do that. Well, you know what? God calls us to do the things that advance his kingdom. God calls us to do the things that are in his best interest, not in ours. And so I'm not sure what the task might be that you don't want to do. I'm not sure what it is that maybe God is talking to you about. And maybe that thing is that you're drinking too much. And you sense that God is telling you, and you're going, yeah, but I don't want to give up that. That's too important to me. Maybe it's some other behavior of yours that you know that God's not pleased with, and he says to you, I need you to stop doing that. I need you to start doing this. But you're saying, I don't want to give that up. I don't want to give that relationship up. Don't want to give that behavior up. I don't want to give that craving up. I don't want to give that up. We know what God calls us to be slaves. And what a slave does is what the master wants him to do. And if the master asks him to do a tough job, then you know what? He gets at his tough job. I'm not sure about you, but there's some jobs that I just don't like to do. And sometimes God calls us to get onto the task and do the work he's called us to do. Folks, you're leaders. Be the leader that God called you to be. Thanks.